So tonight's topic is buying, fixing, and flipping. Every month we do a different topic, different keynote presentation. We usually talk about buying, fixing, and flipping at least once a year because that's one of the things that we find brings a lot of investors out and makes a lot of investors interested in real estate in general. How many of you guys are also watching the any like Flip This House HGTV type? Raise your hand if you're one of those people. Guys, please turn off your TV immediately, cut the wire, cut the cord, do not watch those shows anymore. I ask that because I do see a lot of people who are interested in real estate because of those shows, and they see a bunch of people who are more or less idiots making a lot of mistakes and a lot of poor decisions with a lot of drama in their lives, and then at the end of the show it shows how much money they made, right? Guys, if you are going to let someone be your role model and all they do is have drama in their lives, make a bunch of mistakes, have a bunch of cost overruns, those people should not be your role models in this business, right? Find people who are doing it the right way. Find people who are being risk managers. Find people who are running this like a business and follow those people. Some of the stuff that's on TV, guys, is very misleading. I've seen one property that was on one of those Flip This House shows, and this was several years ago, and they had a house in Pflugerville, and they said the ARV of this house in Pflugerville is $500,000. A $500,000 house in Pflugerville is like the top 2% of the houses that are in Pflugerville, right? It's not the same as in the city of Austin. And they really overshot what the true value of that property was, and we encountered them because we ended up doing a short sale on that property because the value really was not there. So there are a lot of things that are shown on those shows that are really not based in reality. So I want you guys to be careful as you look at some of those, and again, don't use those folks as your role models, because they're going to kind of lead you down a path that makes you think, I can make every mistake in the world and still make money. In some cases, you might be able to do that, but guys, you don't want that to be your business strategy and something that you rely on as a business owner, right? You are still running this like a business, even though it is fun, even though there's a lot of money to be made. But please take that as a caution. And one of the things that I'll also say about buying, fixing, and flipping is it is the #1 strategy for making the largest sum of money as a real estate investor to buy something and later fix and flip it, as long as you're buying it at the right discount. That being said, as a real estate investor, you do have to be pretty sharp to be able to buy, fix, and flip successfully. Basically, you have to be an expert at doing some of the things that you will learn ultimately as a real estate investor. What does that include? That you have to be pretty much an expert at finding out what the value of that property is going to be after you make all of those repairs to the property. So you've got to be really good at looking at comps, or you've got to have a great investor-friendly realtor on your power team. How many of you guys do not yet have an investor-friendly realtor on your power team? A couple of you guys. Thank you for being honest. For the rest of you guys who did not raise your hand, I know who you are already. No kidding. But guys, here's what I want to tell you. Do not think that you are going to be a successful real estate investor without having an investor-friendly realtor on your power team. You have to have someone on your team to tell you what the true value of that property is, or to be able to just give you access at either an assistant level, as an example, to the MLS so that you can pull your own comps. Guys, what did we say the average price in the city of Austin was? It's over $400,000, right? Hopefully you're not going to base a $400,000 investment off of free information that you're getting off of Zillow or Trulia or Redfin, right? Those don't always have all the most accurate information. You need to get the most accurate information, and you get that by having an investor-friendly realtor on your power team. I've seen a lot of new investors make the mistake of getting their information from other sources, or even getting their information from maybe a wholesaler who brought them the deal. If the wholesaler who's bringing you the deal is also bringing you the comps, is also bringing you the funding, is also bringing you the title company, what do you guys think about that? Does that sound pretty awesome? I think that sounds amazing, right? I do. But when it really gets down to it, what I've found is that most wholesalers overestimate the ARV, so they tell you it's worth this, and you go and you do your due diligence and you find it's really worth this. And most wholesalers tell you that the repairs are down here, and you later find out that they're really up here. And then if they're bringing financing to the table too, right, they've got everything covered. So they basically have you investing with blinders on, right? So guys, don't just rely on someone else to give you all of those things if they are also someone else who is benefiting from you purchasing that property. You guys see how those things can kind of go together and derail you? Guys, as a real estate investor, you make your money on the buy. You get your money, if you do everything right, on the sell plus all of your profits, right? So you've got to make sure you get that ARV correct. You've got to make sure you have those repairs correct. And those are big things to be able to walk right into as a real estate investor. You're not just born with these skills to be able to identify these things, to be able to identify what the value of that property is, because there's a lot of tribal knowledge that goes into this. And I'll give you an example. One of the properties that we bought early on in our investing career was on 46th Street in Hyde Park. Does anybody know that area? So 46th Street in Hyde Park is a very interesting street in that the houses on the southern part of the street go to one elementary school, and the houses on the northern part of the street go to a different elementary school. One of those elementary schools is exemplary, and one of those is not, right? Do you think you're going to know that by looking at Redfin or Zillow or Trulia or just kind of figuring that out on your own? You may not, but if you have an investor-friendly realtor who has a lot of tribal knowledge about what's going on in that area, you may be able to save yourself from making a big mistake. Properties in Shoal Creek areas. Anybody invested in Shoal Creek is familiar with that area? What do you see a lot in Shoal Creek? Floodplain. Who said floods? Oh, yes, of course, Scott. I know you know, right? You see a lot of floodplain properties. And sometimes when you're dealing with a seller, that seller may not know and or that seller may not disclose to you that that property is in a floodplain. Do you think that that might affect your ability to resell that property after you buy it, fix it, and flip it, assuming it doesn't get flooded out in the process, right? So again, having that tribal knowledge is something that you don't necessarily get by just pulling free information off the MLS. So again, you got to have a great investor-friendly realtor. Some of the other risks that a lot of investors encounter is and I love this. So some investors will say, oh, well, you know, I probably paid a little bit too much for this property. So what am I going to do to make up for that? What do people do to make up for something like that? Ask for more? What do they do? Say it again?
Underdo the rehab.
Underdo the rehab? What else do they do? What do they do? How do you make up for overpaying? Overprice it? What do you do yourself? You do the work yourself. Yes, and when you do the work yourself, you're always faster. Yes? You always get it done earlier than, for example, a contractor and their entire crew would. Yes? You mind today's market. Joel, good point. You got me there. But I see a lot of new investors who say, yeah, I overpaid for it, but I'm going to do a lot of the work myself, right? And today, right now, in Austin, Texas, it is a beautiful 79 degrees outside. Yeah? So go to your work site, you're going to do your work, you're going to feel good. But when, you know, Texas, we have, and all of Texas really, not just Austin, but we have 5 seasons in our calendar. Whereas most states, you know, around the country, they have 4 seasons. In Texas, we have winter, we have spring, we have summer, and then we have super summer. Yeah, this is like where we have multiple days over like 100 degrees, right? We go back to summer, then we have fall, then we have winter again, right? So we have that extra season. So after you guys get out of your office, right, and it's 7 p.m. because you had to stay there late because you had some special project that you had to finish, and it's 7 o'clock and it's still like 105 degrees outside, and your rehab still does not have air conditioning or any, maybe possibly any power because you're just not there yet in the inspection process, you're really excited about getting in that rehab and just tearing stuff up still, yes? No, right? It's like you think of excuses like, oh man, maybe I should finish that report for my boss tonight, right? You come up with excuses. So I do see a lot of new investors who, when they get started, man, yes, they are there all the time. They're excited about it. They are pumped. But when super summer gets here, they lose some of that energy, right? Because the heat just kind of zaps it out of you. So what I see historically with a lot of investors is when they end up doing, especially new investors, when they end up doing some of these things themselves, it just slows down the work to an absolute crawl, So that means that project that you thought, man, I'm going to hit the market at the top of the market, at the top of the selling season. So I'm going to hit it in June or July. Now you may lose 3 months as you're doing things yourself. And if you're doing things yourself, man, these city inspectors are going to have an absolute field day with you as you're going through the process with them, right? They're going to fail you on just about everything, and for them it's probably just going to be just out of having a little bit of fun. So what I see with a lot of new investors is they do things themselves, right? It takes longer, and instead of hitting the selling season right at the good part of the market, they hit it maybe 3 or 6 months late. And if you saw that graph in November, just based on that distribution curve, right, 80% of the sales are happening in spring, summer, and early fall, right? If you get into no man's land on that, meaning November, December, January, you may not be able to sell that property actually until March. So you've got to be a really good project manager on top of nailing that ARV and on top of nailing those repairs. And then there's also the financial risk of overestimating what your ARV is and underestimating what your repair costs are. On average, most new investors almost double their budget from what their original cost was, right? Because you just don't know how much all of these different things cost. And if you have a contractor issue or you're doing things yourself, again, you can see some fluctuations there. And I'll even tell you one of the projects that I recently did with my experience, I went in and it was a house that was built in the 70s. So what am I as a real estate investor looking for on houses that are built in the 70s? Asbestos? Not really. Lead paint? No, not really.
Aluminum wire.
Aluminum, who said that? Aluminum wiring, right? So I'm looking for aluminum wiring. So I get out my handy screwdriver and I pull off the faceplate of one of the outlets and I look back there and I'm looking, do I have aluminum wire, do I have copper wiring? So one of my recent projects, I looked and I'm like, I see copper. And I'm thinking, oh man, this is awesome. Somebody must have come in and rewired this house. And I go out to look at the exterior box and I'm looking for who are my big offenders when I'm looking at these exterior boxes on 1970s builds? Who are you looking for? Federal Pacific Electric, right? Which Federal Pacific Electric, they've installed something in their breaker switches, which is something that kind of electrifies it and causes fires, right? It's one of the features of their older models, right? Which are a lot of these properties that were built in the 70s. And then the other one I'm looking for is Square D, right? So Square D and Federal Pacific Electric are guaranteed you're going to have an issue with that when you go either through your original inspection with your city inspector and or with your end buyer's inspector. So when I get to look at the exterior box, because I just want to check to make sure they actually finished the job, I saw a brand new GE, a big new exterior electrical unit, and I thought, yes, this person did it right. And it was another investor who owned it, and they kept it as a rental property, so I figured they'd rewire their house as part of the project. And then I started to remove walls in this house. As I started to remove walls, I started to reveal wiring. And as it turns out, instead of rewiring the entire house, they did what? They pigtailed, right? So they just did just the first little part. And my contractor kind of was with me at the time. He's like, yeah, that looks good to me, and yeah, that looks good to me. It wasn't until we got up in the attic that we saw, well, maybe the work wasn't completely done. So there are different project surprises. You do have to be ready for that, and most new investors aren't ready for those surprises. Most new investors, they only do one case scenario when they're looking at a property. For me, and one of my business coaches very early on taught me that you need to look at the best case, the worst case, and the most likely case. What scenario do most new investors look at? The best case on steroids, right? They look at the best ARV, they look at the lowest repairs, they look at the lowest date. They say, I'm going to sell my house, David, in 30 hours, right? Multiple offers, yes. So they look at, I'm going to sell my house in 30 hours, right? And then in reality, it doesn't actually turn out that way. So a lot of new investors have a little bit of trouble with that. Do you guys get in kind of the scope of what you need to learn and to know and to be responsible for as a fix and flip investor? All the things you need to be savvy about. So guys, if you're thinking, I'm just getting started, I'm going to go and do my first fix and flip, and it's going to be an $80,000 remodel, slow down. Make sure you get someone with you who has been through this process before, who can help hold your hand so you're not, and I describe a lot of brand new investors this way. It's like a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat that isn't even there, right? Just kind of swinging in the dark. So make sure you've got someone with you, at least on that first project, just to make sure to get through some of the things that are common knowledge to a lot of experienced real estate investors that is that tribal knowledge, so that you guys don't make mistakes. So you may consider some of the other strategies, and we talk about multiple strategies in our real estate investing. We do multiple strategies in our real estate investing, so there are no money down strategies. But fixing and flipping is the ultimate, the most expensive, the most risky, right? It's the highest risk, but it's also the highest reward. So if you guys are considering a project for a remodel to do a fix and flip, if you want to make sure that you are working with your contractor the most successful way possible, what I highly recommend is taking the time to build a very detailed and elaborate and brain dead stupid scope of work on these projects. Most new investors derail because they get a bid from a contractor that says fixed house, $50,000, half due and payable now would be good, right? And that's their scope of work, fixed house. Does that leave some subjectivity in there? Yes, absolutely. So guys, when you are making the scope of work, for me, roughly for every $10,000 I'm spending, it's about a page worth of detail in terms of a scope of work. And I'll tell you guys, one of my personal stories, I'll tell you the stuff I did good, and I'll tell you the stuff that I did bad. One of my personal stories is when I was a newer investor. I had been working with this contractor, and I finally kind of really figured out how best to work with them and to make sure that I didn't get into a situation where I was doing change orders, or whether I didn't get in a situation where we're having arguments over something that I thought was very clear that we agreed on and we were here on, and then it didn't get written in and something got missed, right? So I made on one of my projects, and I remember this project was on E201 Sandalwood. I don't know why I even remember that address, but it was right at I think it's Steck and Sandalwood, and we were doing about a $40,000 remodel, so I had 4 detailed pages in terms of my scope of work. And I mean, when I talk about detail, I mean like Sherwin-Williams SW6126 black paint on these walls, Sherwin-Williams SW6131 whatever glossy paint on the trim. I was incredibly detailed. And this house, we were doing new doors, new kitchen, new bathrooms, new flooring. And at the time, I was speccing all of my stuff brushed nickel. So everything in that house was perfectly, it's going to be an all brushed nickel, all matched up. So it was new doorknobs, new faucets, new door stops, new ceiling fans, all brushed nickel. And I get to the house the day that they're hanging the doors, and they've got all the doors hung up. And I look at the hinges. And he put brass hinges on this house where everything in the entire house was brushed nickel. And I thought, I know my scope of work. detailed hinges. And I looked through my scope of work, and it did not. So with my contractor, we kind of had one of these. Really? Really? Did you see everything in the house? Really? This is how we're gonna do each other? As it turns out, brass hinges are 10 cents per hinge cheaper than brushed nickel hinge. And contractors, who are my contractors in the room? Oh, I was gonna say, is Ruth's Chris closed tonight? Is that why you guys are here? She gets grilling here just right after happy hour or something? Okay. Because most contractors are eating steak at Ruth's Chris with my money and y'all's money, right? Ruth's Chris must be under renovation tonight by another contractor. Maybe they're over at Perry's for that, I don't know. But contractors have a nose, and it can smell out the cheapest stuff at Lowe's and at Home Depot and everywhere else. It's like your contractor, okay, here we're gonna put this nose on you, right? So that's what they find. And I mean, at the end of the day, I got my brushed nickel hinges with no change order. But guys, when I talk about getting a detailed scope of work, I'm talking about getting down to the hinges. Get down to the hinges, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're making change orders. And for me, whenever I introduce myself to a new contractor, I introduce myself as no change order Shinoa. You guys can borrow that at any time you want. I want to set the precedent up front that I don't want to make change orders, because change orders are always more expensive than if they were in the original scope of work and in the original bid. And that's where most new investors get off the rails and end up in some cases failing, and in some cases actually losing money. So be very specific about this. The more time you spend planning up front, the less time you'll spend crying on the back end or arguing with your contractor. So something to think about. So let's talk real quick about the anatomy of a fix and flip. First off, you're going to do your marketing. I'm hoping Phil talked to you guys a little bit about marketing today. Okay, one person. Good. Yeah. So you'll do your marketing, you'll find the property, you'll negotiate it, you'll get it under contract. Does everyone know where to find the contract? Does anyone know not where to find it? Does anyone not know where to find the contract?
A realtor.
A realtor? Yes. Where else can you get the contract besides a realtor? Do you have to have a realtor? TREC. So if you Google TREC, that stands for Texas Real Estate Commission, and then if you get there, if you will click on forms, and after you get on forms, if you look for the 1 to 4 family contract, that's the contract we use for single family housing purchases. On that site, they also have a contract for unimproved land, so lots. They also have contracts for condos. They also have contracts for new homes, and they have about 30 other contracts, addendums, notices, etc. So that's where you guys can get that contract. And it is free, even though it is written by the Texas Real Estate Commission, and that's a licensing board for all realtors here in Texas. So you'll get that property under contract, so you've got to be good at negotiating. How do you start your negotiations as a real estate investor? What do? How do you get to your number? How do you get to your number with the seller? You make an offer? Do you know what your comps are?
Yes.
What else? One? Carol?
That's what they need.
Carol's the only one in here who answered it right. You ask them, what do you want? What do you want? What are you looking for? What are you looking to get out of this? Guys, most of the time when you ask that question, they're going to give you an outrageous, ridiculous answer. They're going to say, well, I think the tax value has my house at 200. I'm really looking to get 230. You know, or my neighbor sold it for 230. I'm really looking to get that same price as my neighbor, right? But sometimes you'll get the owner who says, gosh, if I could just get $70,000 out of this thing. The one time that happens, you will never make your offer first. You will always wait for them to give you theirs, okay? Sometimes you will be surprised and it will be the best day of your life. You'll do a crazy, wild real estate investor happy dance, which I want all of you guys to do. So always ask them first what they're looking to sell for, what they need, and then you'll go through the rest of your seller interview. You'll go through your numbers to be able to come to an agreement. Now, step number 3, I said complete your due diligence. So I said, first off, get it under contract, and then I said, complete your due diligence. Does that sound right? How many people are offended by the order that I've got here? No one? No one? You are? Robin, why does that bother you?
Because you need to know what the house is worth before you go in and negotiate something.
You think so? You guys think so? Some people say yes, some people say no. You can bail? How do you bail, Emily? You have a feasibility period, also called the option period. And how much is an option period going to cost you as a real estate investor? $10, yeah? Yes? Yes? Are you guys worried about losing $10? If you are worried about losing $10, we have multiple exit lanes, and please remember that the exit may be behind you. The aisles do not light up, but they are there and there, okay? So guys, if you do not have $10 to invest, stop whatever you're doing, and you're not going to, this is not going to work, right? But you got to have at least, well, I'll say $20. You got to have at least option money, so usually $10 option money and usually $10 earnest money. David, does that ever work? Didn't I buy a property from you? How much did you put that property under contract for, option and earnest? Do you remember?
It was 10, and might have been earnest.
Oh, 50 for earnest. Okay, you're a big spender. Okay, yeah, David's going to buy drinks for everybody after the meeting. So $10 earnest, $10 option. How many realtors in the room right now? Does that offend you as a realtor? Does that bother you as a realtor? Not really? Okay, good. So I will say, so the reason why I ask is because a lot of times, and this is for you guys who are investors who are working with realtors, some realtors will say, you cannot put a property under contract with $10 earnest money and $10 option money. A lot of realtors will say, I want 1% earnest money, and I want at least $100 to $300 in option money, especially if you want a long option period. That's what most realtors are going to say. Now, that is absolutely correct for most houses that are listed on the MLS. But for the houses that we buy as real estate investors, most of those are not going to be on the MLS, and most of those are not going to be in perfect condition. Meaning many of these properties, and I'll tell you, I was negotiating with the seller one time, and the seller brought in their friend who was a realtor colleague, and he wanted that realtor to sit in the meeting with us as we were negotiating the sale. And I said that's fine. And he was reading through the contract, going through everything that I had written in, and he said, you know, Shanoa, come on, you're a licensed realtor and broker. You know you got to put more than $10 earnest and $10 option money. You know that the standard is 1% earnest and at least $100 to $300 option money. And I said, yes, my colleague realtor, that is the standard, but not on houses that have a sunroof and not on houses that have a bucket for a bathroom. So in this particular case, we're not going to use the standard, right? So guys, make sure, and you'll know really quickly whether or not you have an investor-friendly realtor or not if they push back on that, right? If they're asking and telling you, oh, you got to put more, that's not the case. Now, when you fix your property and you replace a bucket with a toilet and a sink and a shower, right? Then in that case, what are you as a real estate investor going to ask for? You're going to ask for 1% or more, right? And what are you going to ask for option period? You're going to ask for $100 to $300 or more, right? This is only when you are purchasing a property as a real estate investor from a motivated seller, and usually there's some type of an issue either with the mortgage, for example, or with the property. So those are the numbers that we use. So that's why I have it in this order, right? That's why I have go get it under contract. So one of the investing philosophies that we talk about all the time is, and this is uncomfortable for us. So you guys met Phil, my husband. left brain, engineer. I'm actually left of Phil. When Phil and I first started dating, he would call me spreadsheet girl because I had an MBA from Rice, and I was the MBA in charge of his division, and we met in corporate America, we worked together. So I was the MBA in charge of his division to do all the financial analysis from. And depending on who you ask, like, you know, he says, well, Shanoa was assigned to my division, and I just say, well, Phil worked for me. So, that's how we met. So I'm actually even left of Phil. So when I first started investing, I wanted to really do. I didn't like this. This order did not even make sense to me, right? I wanted to absolutely understand everything and get all of my bids and really go through and do a detailed analysis on what that ARV was before I put anything under contract, right? Because I was very left brain. And as I got more comfortable as a real estate investor, and as I became unconsciously competent about what I did, I got more comfortable about doing it in this strategy. So for some of you guys, you may not be yet comfortable to go put something under contract without knowing all the answers to everything. The philosophy that we use, that we call it ready, fire, aim. Ready, fire, aim. Because I can promise you, and I know there are a lot of left-brainers in this town, this is an engineer's town, right? But I can promise you there are just as many right-brainers out there who are going to come in there and just shoot off an offer and not even do all of their analysis and due diligence while you're still looking at the numbers, analyzing the numbers, going back to recheck your numbers, creating a new spreadsheet that has all of everything really broken out with probability scores, and you know who you are, right? I know who you engineers are. So we had to get a little bit uncomfortable as we were going through this process to make sure that we gave ourselves every opportunity. As a real estate investor, anything you do in life, you want to give yourself as much opportunity as you can. So that's why we use this strategy of ready, fire, aim. Now, if you're only wasting, if you're only spending, if you're only investing $10 earnest, $10 option, it shouldn't be something that you're really afraid to lose, right? So you've got to take some risk in order to be able to get that reward. Now, the way that the Texas contract works is there is an option period, so you can ask for an option period. Usually, when you ask for that option period, not usually, every time you ask for that option period, if you terminate that contract within that option period, you have a right to get back your earnest money, and you have the ability to exit out of that contract without being sued for example, specific performance in the event of default. You do have to let the seller know, hey, I am terminating this contract. There's a form also free on that Trek website that allows for a termination of contract. So just want to release some of that fear that surrounds a lot of brand new real estate investors as they're getting started. Because guys, I can promise you, if that seller's talking to you, they're also talking to someone else. And they're probably going to go with the first person who put something in front of them. So if you're ready, if you're aiming, and then re-aiming, and then readjusting, and then bringing somebody else in, you're going to waste a lot of time, and you're going to possibly miss a deal, possibly miss an opportunity. Get your money together. So hard money, private money, personal money, self-directed IRA money, right? Great places to get money. Then you'll close on the deal. After you close on the deal, you get to do my favorite part, which is managing the remodel. Managing the remodel is for what a lot of you got new investors like. This is what I am so excited about. I'm so excited about getting in there and fixing up that house. Managing the remodel, guys, it's good to have some excitement in there, but you have to run this like a business. Again, it always starts, you will succeed or you will fail based on that scope of work and based on the amount of due diligence you've done on that property. You'll get to deal with city permits and inspectors, and I think I probably rained on the city permit and inspection parade pretty hard earlier in the presentation, so I'm not going to dwell on that too much. But I will say that it is a process to be able to get that going, especially, for example, if you're doing a demolition permit, especially if there are heritage trees, especially if you are going out of the existing zoning or looking for any exceptions to any thing that the city has already put in place. So please understand that that takes some time. And by time, I'll tell you this, I got a call from another investor who was a newer investor, and they were working on a project, and they needed to sell it. And the progress that they had made in the 9 months that they had owned it. They had not demoed the existing house. They had plans, right? But they were not engineer approved, they were not city approved. They were going back and forth with the city for 9 months. That's 9 months of property taxes. That's 9 months of hard money payments. They were already a motivated seller, and they almost didn't even know it themselves yet, okay? There's a fine balance between pushing the close out until you get that property fully entitled and closing as quickly as you can before the seller does something creative, like not just selling it to you, but also selling it to you. Because, well, you offered me $5,000 more, so of course I'm going to sell it to you. Is that a thing?
Yes.
That happens all of the time, okay? So there's this very fine line between waiting until you get all of your entitlements and closing before your seller does something crazy like that. And many of you guys will say, that was the ghost of a past seller. Many of you guys will say, well, you can't do that. A seller can't sell it to two people at the same time. A seller will certainly try to sell it to as many people who will give them a higher offer, and they don't necessarily see themselves being tied into the contract. Their logic has nothing to do, nothing based in the fact that they're under contract with you. Their logic is completely based in, well, this person offered me more, well, of course it makes sense that I would go with this person. And you always know when that has happened, when your seller starts to ghost you. What does that mean? Not answering your calls, not answering your text messages. If you call them from a different number and they don't answer it and they accidentally pick up, they say, we don't speak English, and they hang up. Okay. All right? I mean, they say, I'm at the hospital, I can't talk right now, I'll call you right back, and they never call, but they program that new number in, like, oh, better not answer that one. That's that buyer who offered me $5,000 less, who's trying to get me to sell. Okay, guys, so there are different ways, different things you can use to protect yourself, but you do need to kind of understand that there is this balance in between those things happening. So, just be aware of that. You will deal with project surprises. I told you about my aluminum wiring versus copper wiring surprises. Those sorts of things will happen. I even had a contractor look and he said, oh, well, it's good to me, right? When it's 100 degrees outside, how hot is it in the attic? You know, it's like 150 or more, right? So it's like, hey, would you mind just running up there real quick and just taking a look, just to make sure that wiring just goes all the way to zero? So be aware that there will be project surprises. Also be aware that sometimes when you go to the city and you tell the city, I'm going to be remodeling this house. Here are the systems that I'm going to touch. So I'm going to need an electrical permit, and I'm going to need and you give them the list of things that you're going to do. And they say, that's great. I'm so glad that you're doing that. But hey, while you're there, and I know you hadn't planned for this in your budget, and I know you already bought this house, but hey, I'm going to need you to rewire the entire house while you're there. So what did the city just do? The city just added somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 or more to your budget, right? And they added another 2 to 3 weeks at least to your time frame. So that's one of the project surprises that most real estate investors, they say, well, I'm not going to update the water heater, or I'm not going to update the electrical, or the insulation, I got to blow in insulation? R30, what? What does that even mean? Right? They know, believe me, and even things that you don't think that you are going to do or didn't think about, they've thought about for you. So make sure you understand that when you're making your scope of work. Make sure you've got a good contractor on your power team who's dealt with the city before and can say, oh yeah, the last house that I did of this age in the city of Austin, the city also made us do this, this, and this. So we need to include that in your scope of work. Make sure you have an investor-friendly realtor who can go and look at that house and see, Federal Pacific Electric, you're gonna have to replace that. A buyer's gonna throw a fit about that. Or here are some things that you might have to do as well, because this is what your competition is doing, okay? Deal with vandalism. How many of you guys put vandalism in your budgets? None of you guys? How many of you guys have ever been vandalized? Like if you're doing a project? What did they steal from you, sir? Copper from you? Lumber? So you were reframing, or you were making an addition? New construction? Well, how much lumber was that? Couple $1,000, so that's real money, right? Somebody back here said, who else raised their hand? The microwave? Really? You need to make some popcorn tonight? Really? I mean, what? It was brand new? Okay. Stainless steel? Okay, I would have been really annoyed if you had said it was used or something. But anyway, Jackie.
Drop off roof shingles.
Roof shingles.
Like late in the afternoon and they were gone the next day.
Roof shingles late in the afternoon, they were gone the next morning. Copper wiring, yeah, that's right. So I've had front doors stolen. I've had custom made tubs. Like, you're gonna go and frame something to custom fit this? Really? They don't know if they knew that at the time. Phil, the thing that probably has drove Phil probably the craziest of all the things we've had stolen though is, I was actually on one of our first projects. It was in East Austin, and Angel said, of course. I did not say that. Angel said that. So we had planted, just finished the remodel. So the last thing you do is the landscaping. So we had dug a bunch of holes. Can you hold my calls? I'll just tell them I'm in a meeting and I'll go back to it. You guys can leave if you get any seller calls, by the way. That's fully excused absence or target. So we completed the remodel. The last thing we were doing was landscaping. So we had someone come over and dig the holes. We've gotten these nice bushes, and we've gotten some mulch, and we've gotten a sprinkler with a hose, and we've gotten a timer, and we set it up. And we came back there 2 days later, and someone had moved the mulch, dug up the plants, took the sprinkler and the timer and the hose. Okay?
They're going to take good care of your plants.
They're going to take good care of my plants. Yes, yes. As it turns out, I'm a philanthropist and a real estate investor. It's so awesome. So funny. Phil was so angry. I mean, literally, he's driving the streets of the neighborhood, looking for where are my plants, right? But that's where stuff that happens as a real estate investor. Most investors don't budget that in. Most investors don't think about it. Most investors, again, they don't just do the best case. They do the best case on steroids, right? So in the process, you'll pay ongoing expenses, hard money payments, loan payments, utilities, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, etc. This gets expensive. And how many of you guys in here have done a new foundation on a property, on a remodel that you've had? How many of you guys have done a new foundation? What's some of the collateral damage that comes along with a new foundation?
The landscaping, driveways, fences, and
Walls.
What else?
Roofs.
Plumbing. And at $100 per linear foot, just jackhammering, right? Do you think that adds up? Yes. I've seen some investors get a surprise bill of $20,000 to $30,000 associated, and it's hard to say. It's chicken and the egg. Is the plumbing bad because of the foundation, or is the foundation bad because, did I say that right? Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to say which caused the other thing, right? Or did the plumbing break during the remodel? So some tribal knowledge for you guys is anytime that you're looking at a house that was built before roughly 1980, do a static test on the plumbing. That static test is going to cost you around $250, okay? That static test will tell you if you have a break in your main drain line, okay? This is important because it may cost you another $20,000 or $30,000. You do not want to find out that there is a break in your main drain line after you've completely remodeled the house, put in new tile or hardwoods or carpet. At that point, what are you going to be doing to fix that? Tunneling. And tunneling under the slab is really, really expensive, okay? So guys, be sure to take that as an important piece of tribal knowledge as you're buying and selling, especially in this market. You'll hire a realtor, you put the property under contract, or excuse me, put the property on the market on the MLS. You'll wait for an offer, maintain the property, you'll receive an offer, and you'll negotiate it, okay? This is a great time to be a seller in this market when houses are selling so quickly, right? Multiple offers, above list price, in some cases the same day that the property is listed, right? But you do have to go through the process of negotiating that offer. One of the things that we're seeing right now is because there are so many offers, a lot of times when they do come in full price, who's the person who gets to check that price at the end of the day? The appraiser. Your bank, your buyer will engage a lender. The lender's going to engage an appraiser. The appraiser's going to come back and they're going to say, oh, well, we're going to appraise this property at the sales price, yes? No, they're going to appraise the property at whatever they feel like on that day, okay? And their number may not agree with your number, even if you have multiple offers above list price on the same day that that property was put on the market. The appraiser does not care, okay? The appraiser does not care. They don't care if you've got the best house over there. They are picking different comps, right? And do they care if you get that, if that buyer gets that house or not? Zero interest in that at all. So a lot of times you'll have an issue with an appraisal coming in below market. Now, sometimes the appraisal will come in at the sales price, but then the underwriter will say, what? Appraisal not accepted, my friends. So what will that mean you have to go and do? Get another appraisal, okay? So there are some things that you got. Don't count all of your money until you actually receive it in a wire from the title company, because a lot of stuff can happen and a lot of stuff can happen right at the very end. What's one of the key phrases that real estate investors and even non-real estate investors, sellers, are putting in the contracts that they get with their buyers to protect themselves from that appraisal issue?
But then you have to agree to purchase price and
They write this in, and I'm going to say this 2 times, because some of you guys are thinking, I'm not going to write this down until after you hear it, and you're going to be like, holy crap, that's some really good stuff. And then you're going to ask me to say it again, and I'm going to say that I've already said it twice. So you guys, I'm telling you, this is keys to the castle, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to write it. So in the special provisions, you need to write this as follows. In the event that the property does not appraise, in the event that the property does not appraise for the sales price, the buyer will increase their down payment in order to secure the loan. That can save you from a buyer's agent coming back to you after an appraisal didn't come in right, and the buyer's agent's going to say very sharply, well, didn't appraise. We got to lower the price. And that is exactly what they say every time. Now, you've thought about it in advance, you've outsmarted them. Now, some realtors will say this, you can't do that. Oh, yes, you can. Okay? Oh, yes, you can. Now, sometimes your seller's agent will say that to you just because they don't know. Sometimes a buyer's agent will say that to you. Sometimes a buyer's agent has seen this before, and they are also very savvy. So what a good buyer's agent will counter with is they'll say, okay, we'll go for that, but we're going to limit the additional amount that they'll bring to closing to no more than $10,000. Is that fair? You can write anything in there that you all agree to, so that's absolutely fair. But that's a great way to protect your profits so that you can count your money, right, before you actually get that buyer. Yes, sir, Joel?
But a lot of times, the appraisal only has to do with the mortgage, that you're borrowing the maximum amount you can.
Yes.
So even if it comes in under the value that you have on the selling price,
Yeah.
they can still close the deal because people are putting more money down.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Well,
yes.
that's what it is.
Well, I understand that, but it's.
I think that's what I said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yes?
But it means probably you don't have to write in the special provision. Some people will just do it.
Oh, some people will just do it?
Probably not.
Probably
In
not,
this
yeah.
hot market,
They're
we're
gonna
talking
try
about
to negotiate.
years ago, it was a real problem with appraisals, but
It
now-
still is. It still is. It still is a huge problem. Yes. Still is a huge problem, definitely. So this is good thing to write in for you guys, is to make sure you get that.
Does it ever scare people off?
Does it ever scare people off? Doesn't really scare people off. Usually causes some additional conversation with the buyer's agent. And usually, I mean, guys, this is a seller's market that we're in right now. We have less than 2 months of inventory in the city of Austin. The sellers have all the power. If we had 4 months or 6 months of inventory, do you think you're going to be able to write this in? Do you think if your property's been sitting on the market for the last 6 months with no offers, do you think you're going to be able to write this in? No. But do you think if your property if you got multiple offers above list price on the same day, and your buyer wrote you a love letter? You know what I'm talking about? Oh, our family, we're just conceiving, we're raising our kids there, and we loved how you kept all of the ages and all the growth chart in the pantry, and we think that's so sweet, and we're going to preserve that in your honor. Like, these are the right? These are the types of tactics that buyers today are using to be able to get your houses, yes? Do you think that they're going to sign off on this in this market? Yes. But if the market were different, we wouldn't be talking about this strategy. Yes? You guys follow? All right. Go under contract. Buyer completes inspection. Sometimes that means you may have to renegotiate the contract down. Sometimes that might mean that you have to do some additional repairs. And sometimes that might mean both. So be ready for that. Now, I did have a buyer recently tell me, the roof's bad. We can't get insurance on the roof. And I said, well, your inspector never said that the roof was bad. And I said, and the appraiser never said anything about the roof. I think you're talking to the wrong insurance company. So I said, let me introduce you to my insurance agent, right, who will get this job done for you, right? And we ended up doing that because I said I'm not going to replace that roof. In this market, you can push back, and you can push back hard as a seller. Again, assuming that multiple offers or your property went under contract very quickly. But if you are in a market, and we've been investing for over 13 years, so we have been in situations where we have said, oh, you want the roof replaced? Oh yeah, well, does tomorrow at 12 noon, does that work out? Is that okay for you? Would you like a 30-year architectural shingle roof? We could do that, right? That's what happens in a buyer's market. You are open to anything and everything, but in a seller's market, you have a little bit more power. And man, that feels good. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the roof.
Yes.
How are we supposed to fix the roof? The roof is in great condition,
Yeah.
but it doesn't look very neat. It doesn't look good.
Okay.
It looks good.
I'm gonna say two things out loud. Turn off the camera. I'm gonna whisper. I do not recommend this, but I know of one investor, and do not do this. This is just for giggles, okay? I know of one investor, he's a member of this association. He has spray painted an entire roof. Do not do that, okay? But here's here's something that I have done many times. One of the things that gives away the age of the roof is what? The vent pipes. The vent pipes, right? I have spray painted many vent pipes. And I've also done just little repairs on the roof, right, to make sure that it gets by and stop any leaking that's possibly going on. But on something like this, what I would do is, and a lot of the houses we buy, we kind of look at the roof and it's like, gosh, this roof could go one way or the other. So we put a reserve and a potential probability on that reserve for that roof so that we're ready for it. Now, in this market as a seller, I'm not going to do the roof until the lender says I'm not approving this loan until the roof is done, okay? But so for me, I would wait. I would wait. If the roof is performing, no leaks.
Because I took a person to quote for the roof.
Yeah.
And they told me it's great. So I don't need to.
Then I wouldn't do a thing. You're looking good. And your insurance company insured the roof, yes?
Yeah.
You hesitated for a second there. You do have insurance on this property. Okay, good.
No, the thing is, my realtor told me that I have to change it. So I was like,
Your realtor said you have to change it.
I have to change
Well,
my realtor.
yes. It'll be a lot cheaper that way. Yes, yeah. So do you think that would make it a lot easier for your realtor to sell that property with a brand new roof? Yes, yeah. Now, I mean, give me the price point of this property.
It's $425.
You're good. You're good. I wouldn't replace it. If it's functioning, if you had multiple people tell you it looks good. If you told me it was a $100,000 house or a $150,000 house where you had an FHA appraiser coming in to look at that, then I would say wait until they tell you to do it, but there would be a higher probability on a house like that. Let's see, moving on. Wait for the buyer's lender to start the loan process. How often do you have to extend the contract because you're waiting for the buyer's lender all of a sudden needs an additional piece of documentation or needs this or is not ready to
The
close?
appraiser shows up 2 days later.
Or the appraiser shows up, or, hey, I gave the appraiser, I give the appraiser 3 to 10 days, Jackie, I mean, come on, right? So a lot of times you will have to extend the closing because of one of these things back here, so do be ready for that. Yes, ma'am?
The woman that I was learning from in Atlanta actually had a close date set on the property she had been working on, and the guy went and bought a car Sunday before the Tuesday close.
Yes, yeah, I've heard of people buying cars, I've heard of people buying furniture to move into the brand new house, and they lost their credit. Their credit dropped because of that, because their debt to income ratio, so yeah, that stuff does happen. So you gotta pray, so praying in real estate investing, it is a thing, okay? So you gotta pray that the buyer does not do anything stupid. You have to pray that a hailstorm doesn't hit you. There's a couple different prayers that you will learn as real estate investors. Close on the property, pick up your check, and do it all over and over again. Does everybody know the real estate investor maximum allowable offer formula? Does anybody not know it? Does anybody not know it? You don't know it, so we'll show it. 70% of the ARV minus repairs, 70% of the ARV minus repairs is the maximum allowable offer formula. Everybody got that? Yes? Then you guys won't mind a pop quiz, right? Open book. Have fun. ARV is 300,000, repairs are 80,000. What is your offer? I'm not taking any of you guys with me. 130. 300,000 times 70% is 210,000. 210,000 minus $80,000 is. I'm giving you guys the easy stuff right here. I mean, come on, we can do it. Let's do it together. Another example. ARV is 200,000. Repairs are 50,000. What is your offer? We can do this. Did you say 36?
And 90 minutes.
90. 70% of 200 is 140 minus $50,000 in repairs, means your maximum allowable offer is $90,000. I'm not going to do any more pop quizzes because I'm kind of getting the feeling we might be here all night except for me and this one lady. Thank you for being here. Walking calculator, take her. Maximum allowable offer, ARV, that's what the property could be worth after you've repaired it to match the other houses on the market, okay? I see a lot of people say, yeah, I'm gonna get $400,000 for this and I'm only gonna put $20,000 into it. I'm suspicious, okay? Some people say, I'm gonna get $400,000 for it, but I'm gonna do a rent-ready repair. Well, if your $400,000 ARV was from rent-ready comps, as opposed to fully renovated comps, that's okay. But if your $400,000 ARV has my favorite colors, granite and stainless steel, right? You better make sure that your repairs are at that level too. So these things go in sync with each other. Okay, we've got a couple of offer examples. We already used this. Advanced offers. So don't stray from this formula unless you've done this a few times, okay? Really get this formula under your belt, really get comfortable with it. After that, you may adjust your offer for time value of money, adjust your offer for renovation risk. Do you think you might pay a little bit more than that 70% of ARV minus repairs number if it needs just paint and carpet versus it needs structural work, new foundation, you're doing an extension, you're moving walls? Yes, right? So you'll be able to look at that and make the analysis. Adjust your offer if you already have a buyer. Adjust your offer if you to hit a minimum dollar amount. So this is important. So that 70% of ARV minus repairs offer is the perfect formula for houses priced from about $150,000 to about $350,000, okay? Which is going to be about 80%, 70% probably of what we do as real estate investors just in general. If you have a house that's priced, the ARV is $100,000, your profit margin percentage is the same, right? On average, whenever you use this formula, you're going to make somewhere between 10 to 15% of the ARV in profit. So on a $200,000 house, you're going to make somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 on average. On a $100,000 house, you're going to make somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 on average. If you have a surprise during this process, i.e., you do need that new roof that your realtor told you needed, right? That could be a $5,000 to $8,000 brand new roof, okay? That's most of your profit. If you have that surprise plus another surprise, right? That could wipe out all of your profit. So even though the margin percentage is the same, the margin dollars on the low end get really squeezed, very tight, right? So on some of these lower end properties, unless you are absolutely sure of every single comp or every single repair that you have, right? You may go below that 70% of ARV minus repairs. You may go 65% of ARV minus repairs. On a high-end house, like a $400,000 house, where you're looking at making somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000, if you need to put on a new roof, well, that may only be $8,000 on a $400,000 house, may even be less than that, right? So is that going to squeeze you too bad? It's not. I mean, it sucks, right? But it's not. You're still going to make a lot of money off that deal. So on those properties, you might be willing to offer a little above the 70% of ARV minus repairs number, so maybe 70 to 75%. Now, once you get to $700, $800 million properties, what are you going to do then?
Pray more.
What?
Pray more.
This is a trick question, okay? This is a trick question, because you will go back to the old formula because your holding time will almost always be more, okay? If you look at the months of inventory, so I showed you guys the average months of inventory for Austin, for example, 1.8 months of inventory. If you look at the $1 million houses, you're looking at maybe a 4 to 8 month supply of inventory, okay? So your holding costs, which is hard money payments, property taxes, insurance, all those things, start to kick in at a little bit higher rate and start to get you in a little uncomfortable zone. So then you'll go back, you'll revert back to that 70% formula. All right, analysis and due diligence. As a rehab fix and flip investor, you have to be pretty much expert level at doing some of this analysis and due diligence. And it's only important if you want to make money, right? So you've got to be really good at your ARV, you've got to be really good at your repairs.
If you're not.
What if you're not? Then you risk losing money, right?
You hire somebody that's good.
Can you hire, yes, you can hire somebody that's good, yes. Bring on an investor-friendly realtor who can tell you this is for sure a lock of what you're going to sell it for. Bring on a contractor that you've had some experience with, or you've got some other colleagues who've had experience with to make sure they give you that warm fuzzy that you're looking for. Let's see, best case, worst case, most likely case scenario. That's something I do on all of my jobs. I also just have a little one-page spreadsheet that I use to estimate the values for exterior repairs versus interior repairs. And I do this because whenever I just walk through a project and I've just got a notebook with me, I'm always going to forget something. I'm always going to forget to look at the interior air conditioning unit or the exterior air conditioner or the water heater because I'm going to be busy talking with the seller. I'm going to be busy making a relationship. But when I have my one-page sample, hey, here's best case scenario, here's worst case scenario, here's rental case scenario, and then here's the average prices for all of those different things, I'm more likely to get everything in, and I'm able to come up with a number on the spot to be able to say, this is what I think the repairs are going to be. And again, best case, worst case. So you know, because sometimes the thing about real estate investing is, especially when it comes to foundations, right? Foundation estimates, foundation repairs, you think there's some science and engineering involved in this, right? You think that there's one answer, right? No, there is not. You will get foundation bids that for the same house might range from $10,000 to $25,000. Which one's right? They're all going to have little different plans, right? They're all going to have a little different way of solving it, right? But you've got to, and sometimes and that's the one thing. Like that's the one thing you do have to guess at. Well, best case scenario is this foundation could only be a $10,000 foundation. Worst case scenario, it could be a $25,000 foundation with collateral damage of another $20,000 and pipes underneath the slab, right? So I'll show this to a seller and say, this is what I'm looking at in each of these different cases. Now, I want to go ahead and put it under contract. I want to put it under contract the best case scenario, but if I have to go back and when I go back and do my due diligence and I bring in some other experts, if they come back and say, no, foundation is this, or there is already a break in the plumbing under the slab, then I want them to know, and I want to know too, so whether or not I need to renegotiate or terminate that contract. I'm going to err on renegotiation, because when you're renegotiating with some of these folks, and they're saying, if you feel bad about it, or they say, well, I don't want to do this deal with you anymore, you have to tell them, it's not just me who's going to get this same quote. It's every investor who's going to come in after me who's going to do the same thing. I will stick to my close date when we have to downward adjust that price to reflect the additional costs that are needed to fix this property. Alrighty, earnest and option, we talked about this, $10 earnest, $10 option. Truth about fixing and flipping. It's exciting, it's profitable, it's fun to watch on HGTV, right? But there is a lot of risk involved as a fix and flipper. Anytime you hold the deed to something, anytime you hold that title, you're taking on ARV risk, you're taking on repair risk, you're taking on market risk, you're taking the fluctuations within the market, within a larger market cycle. It's not necessarily the best getting started strategy, especially if you're not good at managing contractors. If you've never managed a contractor before and you don't know, like, well, does this look right? It flushed. Looks good to me. If you don't know, then you may need someone next to you, or you may say, I'm going to wholesale this house and I'm going to shadow the investor that I end up wholesaling it to. Yes, sir?
So I know I've heard that a lot, right? You want to find somebody that's been on this path.
Yes.
They walked this path.
Yes.
So the first timer that is looking to kind of create that partnership, what does that really look like? I mean, is that basically saying, hey, we're going to kind of do a 50-50 on this? We're going to, what are the expectations around that?
everything, number one, everything is negotiable. So, but I'll put, so usually when I'm partnering with someone, I'll do a 50-50 split. If I'm partnering and I'm paying for everything, meaning the purchase and the renovation, I'm also charging for my cost of capital. A lot of times, I'm also looking for a good match with the investor on the other side. So for me, what that means, and I'll tell you guys, my grandmother, my mom used to call my grandmother the dictator. When my grandmother died, I had to inform my mom that the dictatorship skipped a generation, and now I'm in charge, okay? So for me, I want to run things like a dictatorship, right? And I want to know, is this person gonna, I don't want to have too many chief, not enough Indian, right? I want to be the only chief. So if you're also a dictator, then we're gonna run into a problem. So if that's the case, I'm gonna say, listen, let me just pay you a wholesale fee. You can shadow me and you can watch me, but you have no decision-making authority on this deal, okay? So there's kind of that range, right? There's kind of that range. So, but 50-50, 60-40, plus the cost of capital, very common, very common. Yeah? Yes, sir?
So if you're a flipper, you're in the business of flipping houses. So what is your liability as that seller? Especially if you're doing foundation.
I would say any foundation company that is worth their
I understand.
is going to offer a lifetime transferable warranty on that foundation.
So that's the extreme. But there are other repairs in the house that you can be making.
Yes, oh yeah.
So what is your liability as a flipper? Again, it's your business.
There's a couple things. Number one, I would not sell a property to a buyer who did not get an inspection. What am I doing when I'm having, and the buyer's always going to have an inspection anyway. What am I doing? I'm risk shifting, right? I'm risk shifting to someone else who says, here's what this property needs, right? Now I'm expecting the buyer to go through and say, okay, I want you to do all this stuff on this 58-page report. And at me as the seller, what am I going to say?
Pick 5.
Yeah, pick 2, right? Or I'm going to say, listen, I'm going to do the things that are like, safety hazards. But does this buyer now know what they're inheriting?
Yes.
Yes. Now, I would argue my work here is done. If I'm getting a city permit and I'm having a city inspector come and inspect that property and pass me and give me my certificate of occupancy, what have I also done? I've risk shifted. Now, if I didn't have a city inspector on it, if I didn't get my certificate of occupancy, if my buyer didn't get an inspection, if I didn't give my buyer a seller's disclosure, so seller's disclosure is required by the Texas Property Code, then I feel like I am probably keeping some of that risk. But if I'm having them go through all of those different steps and I'm also going through all those different steps, I'm feeling pretty good about it. Yes? So the whole truth is there is a lot of risk as a fix and flip investor. The whole truth is finding a great contractor right now is really hard because contractors are so busy right now, and it's really hard for them to turn down work because the sun's shining, they are making hay, right? The whole truth is you can make a great living doing this. You just have to manage your projects really well. You just have to do your due diligence thoroughly, right? You've got to make sure you nail that ARV. You've got to make sure you have that tribal knowledge of what's going on in the area, the difference between the houses that are in the floodplain or not, the houses that are in exemplary school district or not. Manage that contractor, manage that project. Don't do any change orders. Hit the market on time, right? And keep that pipeline of deals going by always doing your marketing. All right, 3 people. Great, thank you. Guys, thank you so much for coming out to the Real Estate Investor Association tonight. I hope you guys joined us and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Have a great night. Take care. Bye, guys.